All right, so happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Or I like to refer to it as the Valentimes, which has like a end of the world connotation. I had no idea that today was Valentine's Day until yesterday, so I had been planning this talk, and I kind of fit it in my mind into a kind of a love and communication theme. So we'll see how it shakes out. The question of the week and the challenge of the week are something that I came up with on Monday as we needed to quickly get it out there, and it didn't really come from any place specifically for me. It just came from a thing that I thought, like, well, this is something that we haven't really talked about recently or in a long time, really. It's about difficult conversations. So difficult conversations are the ones that you know that you need to have with somebody in your life or with somebody's in your life, and they're the ones that you've been putting off because you're afraid of what the outcome is going to be. You're afraid of just the awkwardness or the volatility of the situation. And these could be with people who are just generally very awkward and or volatile with you, or they could be with the people who you're the closest with. Those are usually the same group of people. And they could be with somebody who you're not that close with, and maybe that's what makes it awkward, or that's what makes it a little bit scary for you. And the conversation is about any number of things, but it is about something that's important to you, and it's about something that you feel like you and or the person that you need to have the conversation with is going to be upset about. And the challenge of the week this week is to have one of those conversations. The truth of the matter is, for me, these days, this is not a challenge, but I remember very distinctly recently having a very difficult time having difficult conversations. I just don't really have difficult conversations anymore. But within the last couple of years, this has been a really big transformation for me. And I know that I've talked to a couple of people in the dojo who have kind of felt the same. It's like I used to really struggle with communicating, and the same kinds of conversations would keep coming up, and I would have the same kinds of difficulty. And now I figured it out. I've just kind of arrived at a different place, and it is no longer an issue. And I think one of the signs that you're really good at this is if you're like Miss Macy, who I was asking her about this. I said, do you have any difficult conversations you need to have? She said, no, I don't have any. I have them right away. If there's something that needs to be said, I say it. And that is, as far as the timeline goes, that is the best advice that I have for you, is you should say something right away. This is what I try to do, the first chance that I get. And it's for the simple reason that the longer you wait, the more it festers, the worse it gets. And that is all pretty much existing in your head, but that's the way that it goes. If you have something that you think is going to be tough to talk about, and you don't say something right away, then you're all up in your head making it worse, and you're telling yourself all these crazy stories about it. And the longer that it takes for you to talk about it, the more you're thinking now, well, now it's just ridiculous because this happened a year ago and I should have said something then, and now this person's going to think that I am insane that I'm bringing it up now. And they're right. You are insane. You should have said something right when it happened. This is something that I've learned the hard way many times with conversations that I've had with people like years after the fact. And it was in my head built up to such a ridiculous, epic thing that when it finally happened and I just, cleared this thing up, this misunderstanding that I had, or this secret way that I had been kind of holding something against somebody, it just became so obvious how silly and undramatic it was. But when we get in our heads and we make it all about ourselves, that's what happens. We are so dramatic. We love drama. We love stories. Human beings, we seek them out and we attach to them, and we get so caught up in the stories that we tell ourselves, especially. And this is really the issue at heart of a difficult conversation. Is I told myself this story and I believe it, and the story is insane and it's super dramatic because that's the way that we like our stories. Nobody likes a story that goes like this. I woke up today, I walked to work, and I sat down at my desk, the end. That's not interesting or exciting. The story that we want to hear is, I woke up today and I spilled coffee on my lap and I was rushed to the hospital and they stitched me up. I got into work and everybody was looking at me like I was an idiot because I realized that I was covered in coffee and second-degree burns, and they fired me and I've never gone back since. That's like a dramatic story. And, two different things happened in those stories, but anyways, it's more interesting. So the truth of the storytelling is that the same thing could happen, but you tell yourself a story that just is based in nonsense. And that's what makes it so hard to deal with. It's when we base our conversations and our thinking, our logic, and our experiences in reality, that everything's very easy to deal with. So I have found a foolproof, rock-solid way of living in reality and of letting go of the crazy stories that I tell myself. And this is what I'm going to share with you guys tonight. This is the way to deal with difficult conversations, is to recognize that it's not about you. And this is something that we talk about all the time in the dojo, being a great partner. Being a great partner means setting yourself aside and making it about your partner. You cannot be a great partner if you are up in your head, worried about your experience. If I'm sparring with Andrew and it's his first time sparring and I'm thinking about, I've got to punch him as many times as I can so that I win and I feel good about myself, that he's going to have a terrible time, but so will I. Because I will invariably not do as well as I want to do. It will not go the way that I have in this fantasy in my mind. And so therefore I'm going to get in some way let down or upset about it. But if I make this about my partner and I'm thinking, how can I make this the best possible experience for him? How can I make him better? How can I challenge him and keep him safe and really make this the best possible sparring for him? When I'm over there with my partner, I'm not making stuff up in my head about what it all means. When we're sparring and our partner punches us, or we're doing push hands and we get pushed, and we think that means that I'm bad at this, or we think that means that I am embarrassed right now because this person just saw me lose, and I'm supposed to be better than them because I'm the senior student, so it's really extra terrible and very dramatic. That's where our mind loves to go, but that's all about us. So if I get pushed and my thought goes to, wow, that was a great job that my partner just did. It's wonderful. And I'm connected to the reality of the push happened. instead of the fantasy of my partner thinks that I'm terrible and I probably am, and maybe I should quit martial arts and never come back because this is such an embarrassing place for me. It's just the simple act of connecting our minds to what's going on over there with our partner. So what does this have to do with a difficult conversation? Well, a difficult conversation is very much the same thing as sparring with somebody, doing push hands or grappling with somebody, because at the end of the day, you've got you and you've got your partner. You have your energy and you have your partner's energy. You have the energy that you create together when you're sparring, grappling, push hands, or talking. And if you can only obsess about what's going on in your head, or you can only feel your own energy, that round of practice with your partner will not go well. Really, you are not going to get better, and it's going to be much more awkward for your partner too. So when you think about this in terms of a conversation, this is me recognizing what's going on with the person I'm talking to, and recognizing that it does not have to be all about me. Now, there are conversations and situations where it is appropriate to set boundaries and to say, we're not going to go there, or this conversation does need to be about me saying the thing that I need to say. But if we enter into it and stay in the realm of our own drama the whole time, the conversation can't go well, can't be a success. So I was just thinking back on like my own way of progression with conversations like this, and I thought, when I was younger, not that much younger, but when I was younger than I am right now, I used to approach these difficult conversations from a place of, I'm scared about this, I'm not going to say anything. I am not going to mention it. I'm going to avoid this conversation, and if I can, this person. I was very non-confrontational, and still my nature, what my first thought, what my gut reaction very oftentimes is still to be non-confrontational. But then I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm a martial artist, so I'm going to be brave and say what needs to be said. I'm going to say what's on my mind. Now, let me tell you, there's a huge jump between not saying anything and saying like that which is really serious and important to us, and that which is really dramatic, and that which we think is going to be the hardest thing to say. There's a ridiculous, huge jump there. And it was really nice to say the things that are important to me. It was really nice to get this all out in the open. But at the end of the day, since that still all lived for me as this is about me saying what I want to say, it was still kind of stressful and kind of an uninspiring, just a not great experience. Having that difficult discussion, it usually ended with, well, we kind of got it out there and it's good that we did, but there's still like this sense of power against power, like it was forced. And then I recognized this concept of, well, this is not all about me. This can be about the other person. And so then I thought, well, a lot of times I don't actually need to say anything, because I recognize that this thing that seems so important to me is really just something that I have made up. It's all a fantasy in my mind, and so there is really nothing to say. I can just kind of let this go. But then I recognized the final step that I'm at now, which I'm sure that there are steps even beyond this, but where I'm at now with it is, I recognize that a lot of this is in my head, and it's not about me, it's about this other person, yet they can still get something from this conversation. And maybe they're finding themselves in the same situation with other people. And maybe I'm the first person to talk about this with them. Maybe there really is like something that can help this person grow. And when you are entering into a difficult conversation from that perspective of how can I help this person grow from this experience, then it's no longer about me, and I don't get upset, I don't get frustrated. In fact, the other person, let's say that they are just really not able to hear me right now. Maybe they're just not able to get it. With the other mindset, that gets really frustrating, that gets really annoying, and you usually end up turning it into an argument, you blow up. But when I'm not personally invested with my own ego about how this has to go, if I don't have an agenda with this person where I have to get them to think the same way that I do, or I have to get them to agree with me right now, or whatever it is that I have to do, it's not about me, then it's easy. It goes well. And you can usually find a way to kind of massage or do push hands with the situation and get around to, what is really important. And use that to get even more at what's important to you. And part of the reason that I thought about this is very tangentially related. One of our students came into class on Saturday and told me a story about her getting attacked. And I hear these stories from time to time from students, and they have all, at least at this school, ended with, "And I got away. And this is what I did, and this is how I used my practice." And usually I'm pretty pleased. I'd say, "That's great. What you did was pretty much exactly what I've told you to do," which is impressive, because when somebody is really attacking you and it's scary, you have a tendency to freak out and go into that place of, "Oh my God, what am I going to do? How do I save myself?" Your ego gets into fight or flight or freeze, and you make it all about yourself. But this student was out and about with a friend, and they're walking down the street, and somebody approached them and was being very aggressive. And she could tell that this man wasn't quite all there. He didn't have like all of his faculties, and yet he was looking pretty dangerous. And he was kind of coming towards them, and her first thought was kind of a combination of, this is dangerous and scary. What about this person next to me? How do I keep them safe? And how do I keep this guy who's going to attack us as safe as possible? And the student has been with us for years, and she's pretty good, and she's very tiny, and some of you already know who I'm talking about. But that's not the way that a tiny person would usually think in this situation. The tiny person usually thinks, "Oh my God, I'm going to die," and just freak out completely. But she's got some training. She knows how to breathe and keep herself calm. And she put herself kind of over there with that person. And so the first thing that she said was, "Don't come any closer." She's trying to keep this other guy safe as well. And he was unable to reason. And so he came in to attack. And she just threw what I'm going to assume was like a medium or lower side kick to the body. And the guy just goes, "Ooh," like this. And they leave. I don't know if they ran or not, but they left. They got away. And the first thing that she thought was, "Oh, I hope I didn't hurt that guy. I hope he's okay." And when she told me that story, she actually led off with, "Sifu, I'm concerned about when I get attacked and it's by somebody who, isn't all there, and they're really trying to hurt me, but I don't want to hurt them, and I'm worried that I'm hurting somebody else." That's a great place to look, and it is not something that we all have the luxury to do, if somebody is physically attacking us. That is very difficult and sometimes not appropriate, right? I told her, look, if this person is really attacking you, and it is either you are going to get hurt or they are going to get hurt, I'm totally against violence if I can avoid it, and if you can avoid it, you should. But if it really comes down to it, and it is simple as that, it's you or them, and this person is coming after you, you might need to hurt them a little bit. Now, she didn't stomp, kick, and break his knee. She didn't poke him in the eyes. She didn't choke him out. She just gave him a soft kick to the belly. He doubled over, and she left. And I'm going to assume that he was probably fine. But you do have the luxury of doing that when it is a non-physical confrontation. You always have the luxury of doing that. Now, you don't have the luxury of time necessarily, because this person could just jump right down your throat with it. But you can always kind of create that moment, that pause, like I was talking about in previous talks. You can always take that second thought and then decide where you want it to go. So I don't necessarily want you guys to think of every difficult conversation as a physical confrontation. But what I want you to recognize is if it's possible, even for just somebody with a lot of experience who's pretty good, who always has her mind in the right place, if it's possible for somebody to do that when they are in imminent danger, if somebody is attacking her, then it's possible for all of us for sure in a conversation, especially if it's one that you've been thinking about for a while. Think your way right into how can I approach this from the best possible place that is really about the other person, about my partner. And this is all about communication. This is all about love. This is all about where we should be thinking on this Hallmark holiday. And I've said this in the past. I've had relationships that are successful and relationships that are unsuccessful. But the thing that all of the recent relationships that I have had, whether they've been romantic or platonic, is that they all have great communication. And while it does take two to tango, and I will always communicate, and sometimes the other person is not willing to, I still do what I can do from my perspective to lead it in that direction. And so if we're going to have great, fulfilling, lasting relationships, or fulfilling, short-lived relationships, it's all about communication. And it's all about getting out of your own head. It's all about letting the ego drop away and taking away this separation, this wall that we put between us and the other, and just putting ourselves over there. What does this person need? How can I make this conversation about what is helpful for them, about what is going to make them grow the most? So this is what we do when we meditate. We practice setting aside the ego. We practice letting that very thin veil that is the ego, we practice letting that go and just being in the moment. And it is oftentimes much more difficult to be in the moment with ourselves and our own thoughts than it is to be in the moment with somebody else and what's going on with them. So I'll suggest that if you can do that when you're sitting in meditation, that you can take that into everything else that you do. Having the conversation, the most difficult conversation, just let that part of you go and just be there totally with whoever there is to be with. Sit comfortably.